Friends, this is not only our last episode of 2024, it is the last episode that will be under the Liberty Coalition Canada banner. As of 2025, Liberty Dispatch will be on its own and independent, and we have a little bit of information about that and how you can keep connected with us. So, what better way to celebrate new beginnings than with the federal Liberal Party apparently falling apart at the seams and self-destructing right before our eyes? Matt and I are also going to give our thoughts on 2024 as we've assessed what's been happening in Canada, and we're going to look forward a little bit to 2025 as we wrap up the year. So because we are less than a week away from the celebration of Christ's birth, what better way to wrap up the year than with saying, "Hail the heaven-born Prince of Peace, hail the Son of Righteousness, light and life to all he brings. Risen with healing in his wings. Mild he lays his glory by, born that we no more may die. Born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. Hark, the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King." It's December 20th. I'm Andrew DeBartolo. That's Matt Hallick. This is Liberty Dispatch.
Hey, and welcome back to Liberty Dispatch, broadcasting across enemy lines into the Canadian culture war. For one last time, our show is brought to you by Liberty Coalition Canada and the partnership that they have with Christian Week. We are so stoked once again to be coming directly to you in your living rooms or wherever you watch our show with, and we are very excited for what the future has for Liberty Dispatch, despite, as Andrew said off the top, the fact that our relationship with Liberty Coalition Canada is coming to an end as operations with LCC shut down moving into 2025. And we're so thankful for, the platform that we were given, Andrew, a while ago now, years ago. I don't know how many years we've been doing this together, but LCC was really the home that allowed us to launch this podcast and build an audience. And it's bittersweet to move on, but the job that we started must continue, especially in our cultural climate and especially in our political landscape here in Canada. We definitely need conservative, really, truly Christian conservative voices speaking about news, politics, culture, all things in Canada like that. And I think part of the excitement, Andrew, is we're hoping that this next year will bring some expanded content from Liberty Dispatch. We were working kind of within limited confines for the last probably a year and a half more or so. So this might help us actually do a little bit more and create a little bit more content for our viewers. So I think that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, so a few housekeeping issues as we wrap up the year. Just want to make sure that you're informed, that you know what's going on and where you need to be connecting. So first of all, for anyone who donated to our news media analysis, who donated through Christian Week, you will still be receiving, if you let us know, a charitable tax receipt for 2024 giving. Make sure in 2025, around income tax returns, that you email give@christianweek.org, and you will still receive your charitable tax receipt for any giving in 2024. So that's first. Second, what about our show? Well, I'm pleased to tell you that we will be existing still on all of our present social media, podcast catching, video feeds that we have. We've rebranded them. So if you like our Facebook page or our X page or Instagram page, you would have noticed that the names have been changed to Liberty Dispatch. So Liberty Dispatch on Facebook, on Instagram, on X. We'll attach the links in the description as well, and the links have been going out in emails. Our Rumble channel is still up and running, Liberty Dispatch. You're still going to find us on Beachhead Media. You're still going to find us on all your podcast catchers. So if you already like, follow, have subscribed to our stuff, you're going to keep finding us there. So if you haven't, make sure you go to our Facebook, X, or Instagram pages. Make sure you like and subscribe to our Rumble channel. Get our podcast directly to do that so that we can bring the content directly to you. That's second. Third, what about emails? Well, the email subscriber list that we've had in the past, we're going to have to let that go because that is connected to Liberty Coalition Canada. So we're trying to develop our own subscriber base. So we've sent out a couple emails letting you know that we have started a Substack. We haven't put any content yet. Right now, we're just using it as a way to build our subscriber base. But we have started a Substack. It is ldcanada.substack.com. ldcanada.substack.com. Head over there and make sure that you subscribe. That way you will receive our emails as of 2025. There's also going to be some other content, as Matt has suggested, we want to put out. So one of the things I'd love to do is to write for our Liberty Dispatch Substack something that's more focused on maybe issues of what's happening in Parliament, legislation that's passing, stuff in the legal world. And it won't be as much of the cultural analysis as much as it will be just informing Canadians what's happening in the legal and political sphere, just to give you all the information you need. So I want to be adding some writing to that through our Substack, so you'll have that. But also, it's the only way you're going to be getting our emails going forward, so that you can continue to find out when we put out new shows, when we put out new content, when we release new interviews, any updates like that. So you have to make sure you do that. Also, just so you know, there will be an option. So for any of you who in the past you have donated, you have supported our podcast, the news media analysis arm of what LCC was doing, you can continue to, and we would encourage you and ask you to consider continuing to support the work that we do. And we're going to set that up through Substack, where you can become a monthly subscriber, you can become a yearly subscriber, you can become a kind of partner plan with what we're doing. Don't do that yet because we're still setting up how that all works out, but we want to kind of throw that out to you. If you've been donating to Christian Week, to the news media analysis arm, as of December 31st, there's no more donations going there. So if you would consider, please consider any support of Christian Week or of Liberty Dispatch up until this point, and then redirecting that toward the Liberty Dispatch Substack so that we can continue to do the work that we're doing. So that's that. And just stay tuned. There's going to be emails coming out for the remainder of this year, giving you all the information, what you need to do, where you need to subscribe. But make sure, I can't overstate this. You have to subscribe to our LD Canada Substack so that we have a way of contacting you in the new year. Also, we're going to be bringing my Maple Theonomous Substack brand under the Dispatch banner. So that's writing I do there for my blog. I actually have banked already a few longer in-person interviews with some very interesting people that you're going to want to hear, and I'm going to build that out. So I'm going to be releasing long-form interviews as well. And then I also have another exciting thing I plan on releasing in the new year that I don't want to say anything about now, but I'm thinking this will be a blessing for Canadians. So that's that. Also, with regards to our sponsors and advertisers, essentially they're all still on board. They're going to keep advertising with us. So once the new year comes about, there's going to be new links and codes for Bull Bitcoin, for Resistance Coffee. Rocklinc is staying the same in terms of how to contact them. But I've been having conversations with all of our advertisers, so they're with us. So there's going to be new ad reads, new graphics, some really neat stuff. The boys over at Bull Bitcoin are going to help us to run online workshops related to Bitcoin and crypto, and even how as a business you can leverage in crypto, and it's going to be all free for our audience. So we have exciting stuff coming out with our sponsors. It's going to be a really, really big year. I think that's it. So if I can summarize, head over to ldcanada.substack.com and subscribe immediately so that you get on that email list. Make sure, if you haven't already, You have to like, subscribe to all of our social media, Rumble, and our podcast stuff. It's all still there. The names have changed. And then if you've been so kind as supporting Dispatch and the news media work for the last year, a couple years, we would ask you to consider still supporting us through our LD Canada Substack, either as a monthly or a yearly supporter. But don't do that yet because we still have to link it to a bank account and make sure that that's all sorted away properly. So just think on that for now. We would love to have you. So that is it by way of housekeeping. We got to get that all out of the way before we begin the next year and before we start changing over our emails.
Yeah, and I just want to say, we've actually seen that a lot of, just in some of the emails that we've sent out, we've seen that a lot of you guys have already done that. So that's very encouraging that I've seen in the Rumble page and our various different social media stuff like that people have already been doing that. So that's good to see. That's the way it should be if you want to keep getting our stuff. And our commitment to you this year is that this will be a year of kind of building and growth for Liberty Dispatch and our brand, especially with some of the additional content that we have been planning for this year. So it's really exciting times. The way that God changes things and glorifies things is generally through tearing them apart or sending them 6 feet under, and then he restructures them for greater glory. And we see that throughout the testimony of Scripture. And I'm confident by the grace of God that this moment will be just that for us. So please stay tuned and stick with us as we continue to grow and develop and still bring you the great content that you know and love from us, with hopefully more and different content, stuff that we've literally never done before. That's kind of our goal. So it should be an exciting year.
So do you ever fear that maybe you haven't saved up quite enough for retirement to take care of yourself, maybe what you're going to hand off to your kids or your grandkids? Well, you should let our friends over at Rocklinc help give you some peace of mind. No more 88-page binders written in jargon that no one understands. They'll help you put together a simple but effective plan that will help you sleep at night, get back in the driver's seat, and understand your financial future by calling Rocklinc Investment Partners today at 905-631-5462 or send them an email, info@rocklinc.com. Well, as we're considering what we want to talk about for this last episode of the year and the last episode before some changes and new beginnings, we did want to talk about reflecting on 2024, looking ahead to 2025, but we have to address the fact that
if story in Canada.
If you haven't heard about this, you've sheltered yourself from the news. But Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has resigned, along with Housing Minister Sean Fraser. So this is significant news with a federal election only 1 year away, with Trudeau's popularity in the toilet, and with, as we're going to show you, the latest results from a poll from the Canadian Pravda Corporation, formerly known as CBC, regarding the federal election coming up. Now, I want you to look at these numbers. If you're watching, it's shocking, but let me read you the details. Right now, the CPC, right, formerly known as the CBC, has Pierre Poilievre polling at 42.7%. Justin Trudeau polling at 21.8%. Jagmeet Singh at 19.1%, and then Bloc 8, Green 5, PPC 2. Now, this is, so you might think, they're not even going to get a majority government, the Conservatives. However, did I mention that this is a poll conducted by the left-wing propaganda arm of the media of the state? So this poll is heavily skewed in favor of both the Liberal and the NDP. Yeah. So I'm of the persuasion
that it's even worse.
The Conservative Party is going to absolutely crush this next federal election, that they will most certainly have a majority, and that this might be one of the greatest losses for the Liberal Party in the history of Canada. So if CPC is saying that Polyev is close to 50%, it's much higher than that, because obviously everyone who takes part in this poll, this poll is designed for people who love the Liberals.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt you're right. This is a disaster. And interestingly enough, you're seeing, I think, like, as you look at these numbers, you're seeing losses basically across most of the parties, and except for the Conservative Party, right? Like even the PPC under Max Bernier, I think a lot of their momentum has dried up. I think they're in big trouble to actually get to the level that they want to get to. But you're looking at Elizabeth May, her support's down. Basically, the Bloc and the Conservatives are the only two parties that are getting more support. Well, I guess you have the New Democrats, but I'm a little surprised that the percentage isn't higher for the New Democrats, who are typically the alternative for the Liberals. But I think, given what we've seen them do in supporting the Liberal government and keeping them in power for their supply and confidence, deal that they had,
I think you're right, Matt.
You're not seeing that jump.
I think you're right. I think that people who support the NDP, who believe in their platform and who think that the Liberals aren't doing enough, I think that they are, in the same way that there were people in the United States who voted for Biden or Harris just because they didn't want to see Trump win. I think that similarly, in order to ensure that the Liberals don't win, and because the NDP didn't do enough to hold the Liberals accountable, I think that they will lose. Interestingly enough, I think that people who are in the NDP, who might be more socialistic in their policies, but who might be more traditional socially, might be switching over to the Conservative Party in order to ensure a Liberal decimation. So we share this because this is the political landscape. In Canada. And in the midst of this, you have the finance minister resigning and the housing minister resigning. And you have, as we're going to see, more Liberal MPs calling for his resignation. Jagmeet Singh, the House leader for the NDP. We're going to get into all this. But first, I want to read from the National Post. I think they've done a fantastic job of covering the Freeland resignation in the midst of what's happening politically. So this is from the National Post. Quote, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is facing life-threatening chaos after the shocking resignation of Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland from Cabinet on Monday, along with the resignation of Housing Minister Sean Fraser, with several Liberal MPs calling for the Prime Minister to step down as leader. Freeland resigned just hours before she was set to deliver a fall economic statement that blew far past the government's promised fiscal targets. At a ceremony late in the afternoon, Trudeau's longtime friend, Public Minister Dominic LeBlanc, was quickly sworn in to add to his role as the new finance minister. Freeland had clashed with the Prime Minister's office over the size of the deficit and several expensive new giveaways planned by the Prime Minister. The government declined to read the fall economic statement in the House as planned, although House Leader Katrina Gould tabled the documents that showed a $61.9 billion deficit for 2023-24, well over the $40.1 billion Freeland had promised would be the maximum. So for those of you who are
literally every single time
who are math geniuses, that is $20 billion more, or let me put it in even more shocking terms. That is a deficit 50% greater than what they said. Is there any reason why she would resign hours before revealing this? So, continuing from the National Post, Freeland has been at odds with the Prime Minister over his preference for deeper spending, even as revenues were falling and as Canada faces serious threats to its economically vital U.S. trade. Now, just want to be clear, Freeland might not actually oppose him, but her, like the alien from Men in Black that needs sugar water thing, maybe it looks like she does.
Yeah. Perfect reference. No, exactly. There's definitely some political gamesmanship going on between Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. I think she has great ambitions, and she sewered her former boss because she knows he's going down in flames, and she doesn't want to be directly connected to that because it's way worse than they even thought it was, and that should shock us all because they've been doing this sort of thing with the budget and the deficit in Canada since they took power nearly a decade ago. So nothing has changed. It's only accelerated and got worse. And Trudeau's big plan of spending his way into support just cannot overcome the lack of support and the pure hatred I think so many Canadians have towards Justin Trudeau and his government. But it appears his own party, and this is the big news, it's not only Freeland, it's people within the Liberal ranks are turning on him quick as anything now, as this news just goes from bad to worse for Justin Trudeau. This comes to us from LifeSite News. 15 Liberal MPs have called on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to step down after Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland's surprise resignation from Cabinet Monday morning. A group of 20 Liberal MPs previously signed a letter in October calling for Trudeau's resignation at the next caucus meeting, although the push seemed to fizzle out. A few MPs publicly put their names to the calls. That has not been the case since Freeland's announcement. Reports are circulating that suggest Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is considering stepping down as leader after a disastrous day which saw his most high-profile minister resign, citing him as the main reason. According to CTV News, a source said that Trudeau is looking at his, quote, options following the shock resignation of Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland this morning. To make matters worse for Trudeau, just hours after Freeland's resignation, leader of the NDP party, Jagmeet Singh, old Juggers, whose party has been propping up the Liberal minority government despite ripping up the spying confidence agreement, he has called on the Prime Minister to resign as well, and we have that video for you.
Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are focused on themselves. They're fighting themselves instead of fighting for Canadians. And for that reason, today I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
Will you declare no confidence in the Liberal government as soon as possible?
All tools, all options are on the table. People are hurting. People are struggling. And so all options are on the table.
Sorry, just to clarify, you're calling for him to resign, but you are not willing to vote no confidence in his government? How do those two things connect?
All options are on the table.
That's not an answer.
All options.
That's not an answer.
What does this mean for your support with the Liberals, though? How can you say he needs to resign, but then you're not telling us what you're going to do for non-confidence?
Telling you that all options are on the table.
Right. I'm saying, Mr. Singh, that all options are on the table. So why are you holding out the option to still support this government? I understand that you're saying that you might, trigger a confidence vote, but why are you still holding out the option? What is the glimmer of hope that you're seeing to possibly support the Feds or possibly support this government in some other way?
Depends on the votes. And so I want to make it very clear. Justin Trudeau has to go. He has to resign. Okay. And because of that, all options are on the table. And we'll look at each vote and we'll make a decision. But now all options are on the table.
But you said there's going to be confidence votes in February and in March. Does that mean if Justin Trudeau is still the Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party in February and March, does all options on the table mean the NDP will vote non-confidence in the government in those 2 months on that timeline?
If we're talking the end of February and the beginning of March and Mr. Trudeau has not stepped down, hasn't he did that call from his own caucus, from his own cabinet, from all the opposition parties, then yes. So of course that would mean if we're coming up to a straight up non-confidence motion the end of February, early March, that's one of the tools that we have. And so there's no doubt about that. I mean, Jagmeet Singh was very, very clear.
Hey,
Actually,
Andrew.
Jagmeet Singh was the hold on. Jagmeet Singh was the opposite of very, very clear.
Yes.
Jagmeet Singh was about as clear as a lead-lined wall. That's how clear he was.
Yeah, literally the most like cryptic, opaque answer you can give. All options are on the table.
Apparently, the only option that wasn't on the table was speaking clearly. That wasn't an
Yes,
option.
no.
Like just saying what you mean was not. That was the only option that wasn't on the table.
Communists lie, Andrew. That's all they do. He's a commie. He lies. That's all they do.
By the way, we might. It might be time for us to officially start
doing
merch
some
line.
merch. Yeah, I know. Now is the time. Yeah,
I think that communist lie. We should have the Jagmeet Singh. The
good beard. Or thumbs up on the beard.
But what we should call it is we should have a merch lineup, and we should just have the Jagmeet Singh Private Select. The selection.
Yeah.
The Jagmeet Singh Premier Selection. Oh, man.
A
whole series of shirts devoted to that.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, is there any significance to the date that the NDPs are giving there? Because they seem to be very opaque about the potential of calling for no confidence. But it seems like, the end of February, early March is a time that their confidence might wane in the prime minister. Is there any significance to that date?
It's amazing how they're able to predict with such certainty when their confidence will be dried up.
Yeah.
It's like our confidence is waning, and we don't know when it'll be empty, but actually we do know our confidence will be empty. Yeah.
12 a.m. on February 28th. Yeah.
Just so you know, the reason why is because that is when Mr. Jagmeet Singh will have put in the required time necessary in Parliament to receive his pension.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what he knows. If an election is called now, he might not even win in his own riding.
Mm-hmm. So his popularity has plummeted.
Yeah. It's the same reason why the Liberals announced that they would push the federal election past October 20th, 2025, so that Trudeau's buddies would get their pension.
Yeah.
So, and what's interesting to note is that if the NDPs actually do support a vote of non-confidence, that's actually quite the shot to those 60 or so Liberal MPs who will not get their pension, which is actually great. So even though they should call the vote now, if that means that 60 MPs won't be getting a pension funded by our tax dollars, then better March than never. So I'll take that.
But it just goes to show you like how unbelievably self-serving the people's candidate in Jagmeet Singh is. It's truly despicable, and it's so like. Okay, we're talking about the opaqueness about the NDP and basically how they've approached the supply and confidence deal since they've ripped it up. They've been opaque the entire way through. The only thing that is evident, that is clear, is the NDP are mainly concerned about themselves and their pocketbooks and the potential of them having more government power. That's what concerns them. Anything else is not in their concern.
I'm no fan of Pierre Poilievre, but did you see what he called Jagmeet Singh in Parliament? He called him. It was great. He called them a Maserati Marxist.
Well, I mean, it couldn't be more true.
Whoever's right. I've said this before. Whoever is writing for Poilievre, his writers, not only do they deserve a significant raise, but they are the same writers that were writing for WWF during the Attitude Era. It's the same,
and that's a huge compliment.
Yeah, Poilievre is cutting the best promos. That was
well. I don't know, Andrew, if you saw it. Like he didn't pull that out of nowhere. There was a whole thing about old Juggers pulling up to Parliament actually in a Maserati, and he was trying to obfuscate.
That's why.
Yeah. He was trying to obfuscate and say, "Oh, it's my friend's car. No, I'm just the the lowly Marxist who rides up to Parliament in my bike, right? That's the persona he's trying to set. But realistically, he's wearing Rolexes. He's pulling up to Parliament in a Maserati. The guy's wearing expensive suits.
Some Canadians are more equal than others.
Yes, exactly. He is truly a Marxist. He's living the life of a Marxist who's close to the inner circle politically, right? Very wealthy, while other people starve and struggle. So that's been basically the only story that has been just in the news since for this week. It's just been an absolute a bomb coming out of Ottawa, and it's really created crazy turbulence. And a lot of it, Andrew, is just it's crazy to think. But we've talked about the troll job that Donald Trump did on Justin Trudeau. But much of this controversy, much of the worry expressed by Freeland, expressed by many people within the Liberal government, is directly connected to the threats of tariffs that Justin Trudeau was threatened with when he went down to talk to Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago. So it's amazing to see how Donald Trump has shifted world politics. Well, he's still more than a month out of actually being put into power in the United States of America for his second go around as president of the United States. So it's very, very interesting. Trump is still trolling about being Canada being the 51st state. He sent out a couple more truths, I think yesterday or the day before, about about the people of Canada probably wanting to be in the United States of America. So it is a very interesting time, and it's amazing. It also shows, I think, just from a Canadian cultural standpoint, we have that little brother syndrome. Like we hate being the little brother of the United States of America. We always try and, prove that we can stand on our 2 feet, our own 2 feet, try and say, hey, we're not living in the shadow of the United States of America. We're our own country with our own identity. But it's just like Donald Trump control our prime ministers, and it creates unbelievable panic in the country that's been in the headlines for the last month, which just shows that we are most certainly living in the shadow of our bigger brother in the United States of America. And that's partly not surprising because we don't have, I think, we are an adolescent in the sense that we don't have a defined identity. We're not mature as a nation. We can't actually stand on our own 2 feet. Because of much of the policies that progressives in Canada have put forward over the last handful of decades.
So obviously we're going to be taking a break for a couple weeks before we come back in the new year. So you won't be hearing from us with regards to developments in this story and more people who resign, but we'll,
unless if Trudeau resigns, we might jump on quick. Maybe we'll do a live. We'll do our first live or something to talk about Justin Trudeau resigning. Yeah, depending on the day.
If I'm enjoying time with family for a Christmas party, then I'll probably not
going to happen. I'm assuming he won't do it on Christmas or something. Maybe he will.
Who's he going to spend Christmas with?
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe. So we'll. I look forward to coming back in the new year and seeing where this has developed. But this is the big story. The big story is the shakeup in Canadian politics. And as it stands right now, there is a federal election scheduled for just under 1 year. And I don't know if it gets called before then. The questions are one, excuse me, does Trudeau resign? That's a big question. Who else is going to resign from the Liberal Party? That's another question. And then what on earth is going to happen leading up to the election? Things are heating up in Canadian politics. So stay tuned. Buckle up. It's going to be quite the ride.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
To finish off our show, Matt and I wanted to just talk a little bit. We won't take too long, but I've been thinking about this last year. I've been thinking about developments culturally and in Canada and thinking about the year ahead. And I just wanted to share some thoughts. I mean, I'm no prophet, I'm no predictionist, but I just wanted to share, reflecting on this last year, what it is that we, I think, should anticipate and be ready for and build toward in the next year. So I think the first thing I've noticed is the lines, I guess the battle lines are as clear as they've ever been and are becoming increasingly clear. And what I mean by that is, I think back to the discussion I had with Bruce Pardy, the Queen's University law professor and also kind of founder and president of Rights Probe, connected with Jordan Peterson, writes for the National Post, kind of very outspoken libertarian who's a lawyer. And we had a discussion about the difference between libertarianism and real conservatism, or as he called it, the freedom people versus the virtue people. And I think what came out of that discussion was the realization that even though there might be short-term work that can be done together in order to deal with the wokies, long-term, we're incompatible. There is a stark incompatibility between libertarians and Christians. The worldviews don't match up. And so I think about that discussion. I think about what's been happening for those of you who are at all aware of what's happening in the kind of Christian nationalist discussions, kind of the red-pilled, the young, restless and red-pilled who oppose the older boomers who've given into the post-war consensus. The difference between, is a nation built on God's law or is it built on natural law? And if that's over your head, basically all you need to know is the discussion, even among professing Christians, is, can we build a country on God's law, or can we build a country on these principles that are known to all people that govern the way the universe works, that are kind of apparent to people, but that are not explicitly biblical? So I'm thinking about these realities, and I think what we've seen this year is that the options are clear. If we are going to build a Christian culture in our country, if we are going to see righteous laws made, if we're going to hope to have righteous politicians, the options are building it upon a foundation of God's word and then anything else, which is ultimately chaos. I think that's become increasingly clear, and it's much clearer than it's ever been before in our country. Mm-hmm. The options are God's word wins the day, or anything else that will be chaotic, and ultimately there's no compatibility. There is no long-term compatibility with these other worldviews. And I want to share just quickly a story. I emailed a friend who's the libertarian guy when the Liberal government announced they're cracking down on pregnancy care centers, saying that you need to explicitly tell us whether or not you do abortions or not, which is really just their way of getting the list, right? It's their way of knowing who they're gonna remove charitable status or not. So I remember emailing this guy who has a little bit of an audience and is well connected, and I said, hey, could you kind of share this through your channels? Could you maybe share this on your social media? Could you reach out to other people who care about this sort of stuff, but who have voices that they would want to blast it out as well? Just the reality of what the federal government is doing. And this person's response was, as much as I, don't agree with the legislation, because I think, it is going to be an eventual crackdown. He said the people who support and the people who ultimately fund these pregnancy care centers, Christians, are the sort of people that want to take my rights away if they ever come to power. Those libertarian rights being who gets to marry who, and should prostitution be illegal? Should illicit drug use be illegal? Right? So the person's response was, why would I stand up for Christians when those same Christians, if they come into power, would eliminate my rights and freedoms as well? That seems like political suicide. So I'm not going to support. I'm not going to get too excited about it. I'm not going to get all up in arms and do my best to help protect these Christian organizations from losing their charitable status, because the same people that support these organizations would have no problem taking my rights and freedoms away. And this person meant it. And I mean, it was, first of all, that's exceedingly foolish, because if your only options are being ruled by Christians or being ruled by pagans, even if you don't like the Christians, you're really going to say that that's a worse option than the pagans? I mean, you're really going to look at history and say that when those who reject God rule the day, that's better than those who worship and follow God and exalt his law? I mean, that is ahistorical. It is foolish. It is naive. It seems kind of petty and vindictive. But the simple fact that this person would say, sorry, Christians, fend for yourself. So you would rather live under Sharia law, or you would rather live under the Marxists or the Christians? And the irony, of course, is that if you have Christians who build a Christian nation, you'll have the most amount of freedoms and protections for people. And that's the best place for the libertarian to live, as opposed to the alternatives. So what he revealed to me was that kind of pettiness, that kind of not being able to understand clearly both history and where we are culturally, shows that there is no compatibility. That if this person would say, if you're going to tell me who I can't, if you're going to say that prostitution is illegal, or that I can't marry this person, or that I can't, my old grandmother can't go to a doctor to have maid done. If Christians are going to legislate against that, then you're on your own, Christians. I'm not going to support you. I mean, fine, then take it with the Marxists and take it with, Sharia law. And so I just thought, but at least he was honest in saying we can't actually work together long term. It needs to be God's law or bust, and it needs to be a commitment to the Word of God in our families, in our churches, in our communities, and then seeking to bring that into play in politics. And that's the only option. The only option is building a nation upon God's law and God's Word the righteous way. And there is no long-term working with people who reject it, because we have different goals. And so that's this last year. And then simply put, this next year, we need to understand where we are, stop thinking that we can play nice long-term and hold hands into the future, stop avoiding the realities, and stop trying to cover up the truth of what we believe and what we want to accomplish, and simply be honest about it and get to work already. Get to work, be honest about what you believe and what you want to do, and stop trying to play nice with all these people who hate God and hate his word, because it's not going to work, and we're not going to get anything done long term.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people that might seem like a weird concept, that a libertarian, especially within a Canadian context, might be not like it's not very principled, right? If you're a libertarian who hates government overreach, you'd think that you'd have enough stones to actually say, hey, regardless of who the government's aiming at, this is wicked and this is unjust. That would be a principled way of dealing with the whole thing. So it's kind of a little petty. Let's just be honest. That's what it is. But Canada is this weird mix of libertine, like properly understood social values that the libertarians seem to want to glom onto, and socialist Marxist government control. And that's the weird milieu that we're kind of working within Canada. So anybody who wants to actually forward a regime that's actually rooted and grounded in Canadian history, British common law, that's kind of predicated on what, at least in lip service, our Constitution talks about, which is the rule of higher law and the supremacy of God. Anybody who wants to reform Canada is going to run into these two groups, the extreme libertarians, libertines, and the socialist Marxists. And that's where we have to be able to show both of them that they don't actually have the world and life view, and the strong religious core of a world and life view to actually lead to human flourishing within their conception of the world. They don't have that. And I've actually been struck because, Bruce, a friend of the show, other guys who are more conservative, maybe more modern liberal, maybe more libertarian type kind of thing. Like you think of like a guy like James Lindsay. He's an atheist connected with a lot of Christian groups now because he's diagnosing Marxism in a very profound way. His prognoses are all over the place. And the one thing that has struck me is guys like Bruce and James Lindsay, I don't think they've done a very good job at identifying who the different players on the right? Because Bruce uses the term virtue people. Well, I think he doesn't actually understand who's in the group of virtue people and who's not in the group of virtue people, because it's come out, the lines are coming out more clearly. The neo-Calvinistic, Hyperion, sphere sovereignty guys, we aren't in the same group as kind of the virtue people that, or the woke right that James Lindsay's putting forward. We're not. We're our own thing. We're not natural law guys. We're not, we don't believe the state exists to impose more like religion on people. It exists as the ministry of justice, but it exists within a context that it is accountable. And that, I think this is a concept that people don't have in their minds. We're not for what some people who are ostensibly in some of our same like theological groups, Andrew, would be for, which is like using the state to forward a powerful Christians. No, we think the government is delimited in what they can do, biblically speaking. But that seems like that concept for our friends like Bruce and what have you, that doesn't even register with them. They're not even thinking in those terms that, okay, there is a distinction between church and state. These are in different spheres with their different roles, and they've been given different tools to forward those roles. But that within this sphere sovereignty context, literally every sphere is accountable to God. So that's where it's like we can make these distinctions between the different spheres. We can understand their separate roles and purposes and how they function differently, but we can't separate them out from the rule of God. And that's a concept that ultimately it sticks in the throat of the libertarians and the socialist Marxists, because nobody wants to be accountable to God in the way that, apart from the regenerating power of the Holy Spirit, man does not want to be under the authority of God and his word. But the authority of God and his word are the only thing that can create truly free societies. And that's our argument that I don't think many of our friends, maybe politically speaking, we're closer to, have really understood well enough. What came out in your conversation with Bruce is Bruce does not have a standard that is both relevant and authoritative to make any moral judgments, let alone pass those moral judgments into laws that can mean life or death for people. Bruce wants to get coercion out of the state. We're there with him. Let's lessen the coercion in our society. Leftists are the most violent people in society. They wouldn't accept that, but they don't think logically through their positions, right? Whenever they're saying the government has to do this, the government has to do that. Well, the government has one tool, and that's the sword. So every time the government does anything, it actually creates coercion in society because they do it with the iron sword of justice behind them, right? So we're with Bruce as far as like lessening government, lessening coercion in our society, but we don't we're unlike Bruce, we actually have a standard that government has to adhere to. They don't get the option of not doing their job. They don't get the option of promoting wickedness and turning a blind eye to injustice. They don't get that option because they're a slave. And and that's where ultimately we differ from Bruce. And I think what's kind of came out just on your note, things have been shaken seriously over the last 2 or 3 years. There's been a great unveiling where people have seen, okay, the secular humanistic experiment, if you want to use the term post-war consensus, whatever you want to call that, it's failing. It's a horrible mess.
Or as people would say, the fruit of the Enlightenment, right? That the Enlightenment produced a good thing, and secular humanism and the fruit of the Enlightenment, that whole project has been a failure.
Yeah.
And the only reason why the American project is different is because even though these men were influenced by the Enlightenment, if you look at the Federalist Papers and the founding documents, nothing was quoted more than the scriptures.
Yeah.
So even though they have the Enlightenment over here, if you separate biblical truth from the Enlightenment, what you get is the French Revolution, or what you get is the Russian Revolution, or what you get is all of the vile bloodshed and evil that you see in the world. So that's the Enlightenment left to itself.
Just for people to understand, it's actually better to talk about two enlightenments, right? Because during the Enlightenment period that people refer to, there was actually two schools of enlightenment. So the Scottish, British context, the Scottish Enlightenment is what it's called, but it's kind of the more British context, the Anglosphere context. And then you have the more continental Enlightenment, which is like the French revolutionaries. One is way more radically autonomous, and one is a lot more conservative. And that's because you have to understand that the British Enlightenment was so influenced by Christianity, by Calvinistic, by Puritans and Pilgrims, and even John Locke. I did an entire paper in school about how essentially, if you read Locke, John Locke baptized Calvinistic dual covenantal theory on how nations are created in Enlightenment language. So he took something that already existed, right? John Locke is son of a Puritan parliamentarian who fought in Cromwell's New Model Army. He went to Puritan schools. He was bathed in Puritanism. He didn't come up with anything brand new. He called instead of covenant, he used the word contract. But it's really, the concept is not too crazy different. But that's what we're saying, that the English Enlightenment, the Scottish Enlightenment is far different than the humanistic aspect of the French Enlightenment. But the French Enlightenment and their values are far more reminiscent to our modern day values in Canada than anything that came out of the Scottish Enlightenment or the English Enlightenment that was far more influenced by Christianity. And what we're going to have to, if we want, like you said, we've said this on the program over and over again, it's either Christ or chaos. There is no options. That's become more and more clear. What has also become more and more clear, and this is disheartening, is that people are less and less prepared for that stark antithesis than I thought people might be, Andrew. The shaking, I was like, this is maybe it's very hopeful that people, okay, their lives have been shaken. Now it's time to turn to something that cannot be shaken, which is the Word of God, which is the kingdom of God, which is the only totalizing principle in all of human life. But it appears that we don't have the reformation and revival that we need as a society, because people are looking for halfway houses, half measures in order to bring the reform necessary in our society. And I think Pierre Poilievre is the half measure in a human person. Truly, like, the CPC is bad. They're not going to bring the reform that we truly need.
It's funny. I'll share this because I had a discussion with a friend who is kind of swims in the political world a little bit, and we were talking about how do we cast votes, and I was thinking through, so Christians in the last several years have been really been zeroing in on what the role of the state is, right? As outlined in Romans 13, to punish those who break God's law and to reward those who keep it, to provide national defense and enforce borders. That's the role of the state. Simple, okay? Kind of that's their tripartite role. So if that's the role of the state, let's play this out. If the role of the state is to punish those who break God's law, in essence, what that means is that they have been instituted by God to protect the rights and freedoms of people given to them by God, right? So if you punish murderers, you're doing that because people have a fundamental right to live, and the state, in order to protect that right, must punish murderers. If the state punished those who steal, it's because human beings have a fundamental right to private property, and the state must punish those who violate it. So when we think about the state's role in punishing lawbreakers, what we need to see is that the kind of the mirror right or freedom that exists is, in essence, the state's role. So the state's role is to punish lawbreakers, but really the state's role is to protect and honor the rights and freedoms given to people by God. So
that they don't get to dictate. Right. That's the thing. These are pre-government, pre-civic, and that's also where I would push back against our friend like Bruce Party. Is where do you get that from, Bruce? Like, in your own world and life view, how are these rights pre-civic? Explain that to me within a biblical framework. That makes total sense. And even Locke, like, if you want to go back to Locke, he argues literally from the Bible, from Adam and Eve, to justify those pre-civic rights. So that's where some of these more classical libertarian guys who aren't themselves Christians, I just don't know where you're getting this from. You just like it? I don't know. That's not good enough.
So if that's their job, then if their job is to essentially protect the rights and freedoms given to people by God in the context of a nation, and they do that by punishing those who break the laws. Okay, so then let's think the most fundamental right that a human being has is the right to life. Is the right, if they're alive, the right to life, and not have that life snuffed out if they're innocent, not to have that life snuffed out because of murder or intentional taking of that life. Now, the reason why we know that's the most fundamental is because, I mean, when you're born, you don't have private property. You don't have any. You can't really be slandered or have libel. So the only thing you have is the right to live, and that's one of the reasons why murder is the most severely punished of all the crimes. So, if that's the most fundamental right, that means that the state's primary job, the primary of all of the laws that they're supposed to enforce, the primary job of the state is to protect the citizens' right and freedom to life. Yes. If that is the state's primary job, how can Christians ever cast a vote for someone who scores an F on that report card? So because people will talk about, again, Poilievre's better than Trudeau and he's not as woke. Listen, put all that crap in the garbage where it belongs. And let's just deal with the fundamental responsibility. So, but I'm not even arguing from the position of he's a Christian, he's a non-Christian. Because people would say, you're not voting for a pastor, you're voting for a politician. He doesn't have to be a Christian. Again, let's park that. Let's put that on the side. I don't want to deal with that. His beliefs are irrelevant. What I'm talking about is the fundamental role of one who governs is to secure the right to life of the citizens. That is the first job. That's the first checkpoint of a civil magistrate. If Pierre Poilievre has told you that he definitively will not seek to protect the right to life for a significant portion of the Canadian population, he has told you that he will not do his job. He's told you he will not fulfill his basic requirement, which is to protect the right to life of citizens by doing nothing about the preborn babies that are murdered, doing nothing about old people who are requesting doctor-assisted murder. How can you ever cast a vote for someone who he's basically told you, I will not do my job? I might do some aspects of the job that you might like, but the first and most important thing that I'm required to do, he has told us, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do the job I'm supposed to do, and I will violate my primary purpose and not actually secure the rights of some 100,000 Canadians a year. You can't vote for him.
Yeah.
You just can't vote for him. That's all the reason you need right there. He's told you he's not going to do his job and that he's not going to protect Canadians. So that's all you need. I don't care about fiscal this. I don't care about woke that. That's enough to say he can't be supported.
No, exactly. And especially since, Canada, we're talking about something totally different than the American context in the sense that, the life debate in a federal system in the United States of America, now that it's been taken away from the federal government, it is a state-by-state issue. Well, criminal law in Canada happens at the top down. It happens at the federal level. So this is where it needs to be advocated at this level. There's plenty of things that I think actually provinces can do provincially to apply pressure, especially given that they have the mandate of healthcare. But yeah, no, I think it's really important to understand, and that's what I've talked to a lot of people about when I was working for CCBR. I said, it's obvious to anybody who thinks about it for 3 seconds that life is the most basic of all rights, which all other rights are superfluous if you're dead, right? Life is the most basic of rights, and your freedom to live is essential. So every other freedom in our lives, in civic life, in society, whatever it might be, is predicated on that right to life. And if we're a society that is wantonly killing lives, whether it's before they're born to tunes of hundreds of thousands a year, or whether it's late in life when we've deemed them infirm or problematic, it's all just if you have a society that loves death, tyranny is the only option for you, and that's why it's Christ or chaos. It's ordered liberty. It's virtuous liberty. It's liberty within law
or revolution. It's reformation or revolution. Those
are the only options.
Where we're at right now. Yeah,
and that's where I don't think we're prepared to. We're not mature enough as Canadians to see things in that stark of terms and to deal with things in that way. And that's maybe been a discouragement for me.
But there's a way. There's a way. So this is how we're going to land the plane.
Yeah.
What we want to do through our show, through our writing, through blogging, through interviews, through the content we release, is not just trying to hit that real niche market.
No.
Because the reality is this is not the majority. The views we hold and the steps that we believe are required are actually not the majority view in Canada.
No.
They're actually not the majority view among professing Christians either. And we understand that. But our goal is not to be popular, and the goal is not let's just build a huge platform. The goal is to be faithful and to actually tell you what it is that we think is required according to God's law. So even though I would agree that the majority of Canadians for sure, and professing Christians also, I don't think are prepared and ready for what it's going to take, well, we want to help with that. That's how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as through looking at news, culture, and politics and analyzing it from a distinctly biblical world and life view, from trying to make sense of what's going on and then offer biblical solutions and alternatives. We want to equip you to do that. We want to equip you to understand what's happening. We want to equip you to be ready for what's going to happen. And we want to equip you to do the necessary things required to flourish, to be faithful, and to thrive in the days ahead. So I'm going to come back around to where we started at the beginning before Matt gives our final send-off of the calendar year. And I want to say, so you absolutely need to keep in touch with us, and you absolutely need to be connected to what we're doing, especially as there's a little bit of a transition coming. So I'll say again, you need to head over to ldcanada.substack.com if you haven't already, and subscribe there so that you will be a part of our mailing list as of January 1st. That is how you'll get emails with shows, interviews, content, stuff we're doing, writing. That's the place, ldcanada.substack.com. You have to go there, subscribe now, number one. Number two, all our social media, our video feeds, our podcast catchers, they're all still intact. The name has changed on them. It's Liberty Dispatch. So if you haven't already, on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, head to Beachhead Media on Rumble, on Podbean, on Spotify. Like us, subscribe, follow. Make sure that you get all the content that we put out. We're also planning on attempting for a third time a YouTube channel, maybe having some curated material there, but stay tuned. Forthcoming. And then finally, consider supporting our work. Excuse me. If you've been supporting the work of Liberty Dispatch on our podcast, consider also supporting us through the Substack. More information coming. Matt, take us home.
Well, thank you so much for everybody who's been listening, watching us, who's been a support in any way. Again, if you could continue to support us, go over to our Substack. I will have that link in the description below to make it very easy for you. I usually stack our descriptions if you've never seen them with all the information you could possibly need, and that won't change because we want to make things as easy for you in this transition as possible. We hope you're excited for some of the new content that we have teased a little bit in this show. We're hoping to just be faithful with the platform that the Lord has blessed us with, and we hope that you'll continue to support us as we move into this next year. For Andrew and I know I speak for both of us when we say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, have a wonderful, blessed end of your year, spend some time with your family, get offline, do things incarnationally, go to church, reflect on the incarnation of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who won freedom for us, which is absolutely essential for us to understand. And he put existential terror into the unjust, tyrannical princes of this world, even just as a baby, let alone as an ascended, resurrected king who's sitting at the right hand of God in power on high. And it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. So stand firm, therefore. Do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Signing off one last time for Liberty Coalition Canada. This is the Liberty Dispatch. God bless you all. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Liberty Dispatch has been brought to you in partnership with Liberty Coalition Canada and Christian Week, and has been produced by SDG Media. You can find all things Liberty Coalition Canada at libertycoalitioncanada.com.